Hey there, you're looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out all my other socials. Enjoy. Cooper carefully prepared the final steps of his experiment. Months of research had led to this moment, testing a newly discovered plant extract that showed promise for revolutionary cellular changes. His heart raced as he contemplated the potential breakthroughs this could bring to the field of biology. With steady hands, Cooper measured out a precise dose of the pale green liquid into a small pill capsule. He hesitated for just a moment before swallowing it, chasing it down with a swig of water. Now all that was left was to carefully document any effects. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Cooper jotted down some initial observations in his notebook, noting the time and his current physical state. But within minutes, an odd, tingling sensation began to spread through his body. He quickly scribbled down the new development, his handwriting growing messier as the tingling intensified into pins and needles. Fascinating, Cooper muttered, though his voice came out higher than usual. A wave of dizziness washed over him, and he gripped the edge of the lab bench to steady himself. The room began to spin, and he squeezed his eyes shut, trying to fight off a sudden bout of nausea. When the vertigo finally passed, Cooper slowly opened his eyes and gasped in shock. The lab coat that had fit perfectly before now hung loosely on a distinctly feminine frame. He, or rather she, stared down in disbelief at the soft curves that had replaced his formerly flat chest. "This can't be happening," she whispered, but the high melodic voice that emerged only confirmed the impossible truth. Somehow, the plant extract had completely transformed Cooper's body from male to female. Heart pounding, she rushed to the small mirror hanging in the lab. The face staring back was undeniably feminine. Delicate features, full lips, and long eyelashes framing wide hazel eyes. Cooper's short brown hair now fell in waves past her shoulders. She stumbled backwards, mind reeling as she tried to process the radical change. This went far beyond anything she could have anticipated from the experiment. How was this even possible? And more pressingly, was it permanent or temporary? Cooper's first instinct was to document everything. She grabbed her notebook and began furiously writing down observations, pausing occasionally to examine her new body. Height reduced by approximately 4 inches. Muscle mass decreased, body fat redistributed. Bone structure altered, particularly in face and hips. After several pages of notes, the reality of the situation began to sink in. Cooper set down her pen and took a deep, shaky breath. She needed to think through the immediate practical concerns. First things first, she couldn't very well go home dressed in men's clothing that no longer fit properly. Cooper rummaged through her bag and found an oversized sweater she sometimes wore in the chilly lab. It would have to do for now. She gathered her belongings, heart racing as she contemplated leaving the privacy of the lab. How would she explain this to her colleagues? To her friends and family? Cooper decided it was best to avoid any encounters for now and sneak out as quickly as possible. Thankfully, it was late evening and the halls were deserted. Cooper made it to her car without incident, though she fumbled with the keys, still not used to her smaller hands. The drive home was nerve-wracking. Every stoplight felt like an eternity as she worried someone would notice something amiss. Once safely inside her apartment, Cooper sank onto the couch, mind whirling. She needed a plan. Step 1 would be acquiring some proper women's clothing. But how? Online shopping seemed the safest bet for now. She spent the next few hours researching women's sizes and styles, feeling completely out of her depth. By the time she placed an order for some basics, jeans, t-shirts, underwear, it was well past midnight. Cooper crawled into bed, wondering if she would wake up to find this had all been some bizarre dream. But morning brought no reversal. If anything, the changes seemed even more pronounced in the harsh light of day. Cooper stared at her reflection, still struggling to reconcile the image with her sense of self. She attempted to go through her normal routine, but everything felt off. Brushing her teeth, she kept bumping her elbows awkwardly. In the shower, the rush of sensations on her altered body was overwhelming. Even walking felt strange with her new center of gravity. The doorbell startled her out of her daze. Her clothing order had arrived. Cooper hesitated before opening the door, worried the delivery person would somehow know her secret. But the interaction was brief and uneventful. Back inside, she unpacked the clothes with trepidation. The soft fabrics felt foreign in her hands. Cooper took a deep breath and began to dress. The bra was particularly challenging. It took several attempts before she managed to fasten it properly. Fully clothed, she assessed her appearance in the mirror. The outfit was simple, jeans and a purple V-neck shirt, but it fit her new form perfectly. Cooper was struck by how natural she looked as a woman. It was unsettling. A sudden thought hit her. She couldn't very well continue using the name Cooper. It would raise far too many questions. She needed a new identity to match her new body, at least until she could figure out how to reverse this. After some contemplation, she settled on Amalia. It felt right somehow, a fresh start to match her transformed state. Amalia. She repeated it softly, getting used to the sound. The next challenge was makeup. Amalia had included some basic cosmetics in her order, but she had no idea how to apply them. She pulled up some tutorial videos and spent the next hour practicing. The results were far from perfect, but at least she didn't look like a complete disaster. Amalia knew she couldn't hide away forever. She needed groceries, and more importantly, she needed to get back to the lab to run tests and try to understand what had happened to her. But the thought of going out in public filled her with anxiety. She paced her apartment, trying to work up the courage. Finally, she grabbed her keys and headed for the door before she could change her mind. The walk to her car felt like running a gauntlet, though realistically, no one paid her much attention. At the grocery store, Amalia kept her head down, focusing intently on her shopping list. She was hyper-aware of her body, worried her movements would somehow give her away. But as she went through the motions of selecting items and placing them in her cart, she slowly began to relax. The cashier smiled at her. "Find everything okay, miss?" Amalia nodded, not quite trusting her voice yet. She paid quickly and hurried out to her car, both relieved and somewhat exhilarated to have made it through her first outing. Back home, she allowed herself a moment of pride. She had done it, ventured out into the world as a woman without incident. Maybe she could handle this after all, at least in the short term while she worked on a solution. The real test would be returning to the lab. Amalia spent the evening preparing, rehearsing explanations for her sudden appearance and absence. She decided to present herself as a new research assistant, hoping her colleagues wouldn't look too closely. Morning found her standing outside the biology building, smoothing her blouse nervously. She took a deep breath and pushed through the doors. The familiar surroundings felt strange from her new perspective. Amalia made her way to the lab, nodding politely to passing students and faculty. So far, so good. No one seemed to recognize her. She swiped her keycard and entered the lab, immediately heading for her workstation. "Can I help you?" She froze at the sound of Dr. Larson's voice. Amalia turned slowly to face her mentor, heart pounding. "Yes, hello. I'm Amalia, the new research assistant." Her voice came out higher than intended. Dr. Larson frowned. "New assistant? I wasn't informed we were getting anyone new." Amalia fumbled for an explanation. "Oh, I'm so sorry. There must have been some miscommunication. I was told to report here today. Perhaps we could check with the department office." The older woman's expression softened slightly. "No need to apologize, dear. These mix-ups happen sometimes. Why don't you get settled in, and I'll make some calls to sort this out." Breathing a sigh of relief, Amalia turned back to her workstation. She quickly located her research notes and began reviewing them, trying to piece together what exactly had triggered her transformation. The next few hours passed in a blur of analysis and experimentation. Amalia was so engrossed in her work that she almost forgot about her predicament. It wasn't until Dr. Larson approached again that reality came crashing back. "Well, It seems there was quite the administrative error, Dr. Larson said. But we've got it all sorted now. Welcome to the team, Amalia. I'm looking forward to seeing your contributions. Amalia blinked in surprise. Somehow, her hastily concocted cover story had become reality. She now had an official position in the lab, as herself, but not herself. The situation was growing more complex by the minute. Over the next few weeks, Amalia settled into a routine. She threw herself into her research, determined to understand the mechanism behind her transformation. But progress was frustratingly slow. Meanwhile, she was gradually adjusting to life as a woman. Simple things like using public restrooms or buying clothes still filled her with anxiety, but they were becoming more manageable. She even ventured out to a cafe one afternoon, sipping a latte while she worked on her laptop. The biggest challenge was navigating social interactions. Amalia found herself having to construct an entirely new personal history on the fly. She stumbled through conversations about her background, inventing details about her childhood and education. Her colleagues in the lab were friendly, if a bit distant. Amalia got the sense that they found her somewhat odd, but she couldn't risk getting too close and revealing her secret. The isolation was taking its toll, but she saw no other option for now. One particularly trying day, Amalia was struggling to open a stubborn jar in the lab. Her smaller hands just couldn't get enough grip. Frustrated tears pricked at her eyes, yet another reminder of how much had changed. Here, let me help with that. She looked up to see Mark, one of the grad students, reaching for the jar. He opened it easily and handed it back with a smile. These things can be tricky sometimes. Thanks, Amalia mumbled, embarrassed by her show of weakness. Mark lingered, looking like he wanted to say more. Hey, a bunch of us are grabbing drinks after work if you'd like to join. No pressure, but it might be nice to get to know the team better. Amalia's first instinct was to decline. But after weeks of self-imposed isolation, the idea of social interaction was tempting. That sounds great, actually. Thank you. That evening found her perched somewhat awkwardly on a bar stool, nursing a glass of wine as her colleagues chatted around her. She mostly listened, offering occasional comments and laughing at jokes. It felt good to be part of a group again, even if she couldn't fully be herself. As the night wore on, Amalia found herself relaxing. The conversation flowed more easily, lubricated by alcohol and shared scientific interests. For a little while, she was able to forget about her unusual circumstances and just enjoy the company. It was nearly midnight when the group finally dispersed. Amalia waved goodbye to her new friends, a warm glow of contentment settling over her. Maybe this new life didn't have to be all stress and loneliness. The next morning brought a pounding headache. Apparently, her new body had a lower alcohol tolerance. Amalia groaned as she fumbled for painkillers, vowing to be more careful next time. Despite the discomfort, she felt a renewed sense of determination as she headed to the lab. The social outing had reminded her of everything she was working towards. She needed to solve this puzzle, not just for herself, but for the potential scientific breakthroughs it represented. Weeks turned to months as Amalia pursued every possible lead. She analyzed and reanalyzed the plant extract, ran countless simulations, and pored over stacks of research papers. But a solution remained elusive. In the meantime, her new life was becoming not exactly comfortable, but familiar. She had settled into her role at the lab, earning respect for her dedication and insight. Her colleagues no longer treated her as the odd newcomer, but as a valued member of the team. Amalia had even started to make a few tentative friendships outside of work. There was Sarah, the barista at her favorite cafe who always remembered her order, and Miguel, her neighbor who would chat with her in the elevator. Small connections, but they helped ease the loneliness. One crisp autumn morning, Amalia stood in front of her closet, contemplating her wardrobe. She reached for a floral dress she had recently purchased, then paused. When had she started actually liking feminine clothing? The realization was unsettling. She shook off the thought and finished getting ready. Today was a big day. She was presenting her research to the department heads. It was a chance to secure more funding and resources for her work. Amalia strode into the conference room, tablet in hand. She took a deep breath, centering herself before launching into her presentation. The words flowed smoothly as she outlined her findings and proposed next steps. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Then the room erupted in applause. Dr. Larson beamed at her. "Exceptional work, Amalia. I think I speak for everyone when I say we're excited to see where this research leads." The sense of accomplishment was intoxicating. For a moment, Amalia forgot about her quest to reverse her transformation. She had done this, proven herself as a scientist in her own right, regardless of her physical form. But reality came crashing back as she caught her reflection in a window. The woman staring back was undeniably her, but also a stranger. How much longer could she live this double life? That evening, Amalia sat at her desk, staring at her research notes. She had been so focused on finding a way to change back that she hadn't stopped to consider the broader implications of her discovery. The potential applications were staggering, in medicine, in biology, in human understanding of gender and identity. She picked up a pen and began to write, ideas flowing faster than she could get them down. What if instead of trying to reverse the process, she focused on controlling and refining it? The ability to safely and temporarily alter one's physical sex could revolutionize treatment for a range of conditions. As the night wore on, Amalia's excitement grew. This could be her life's work. Not a mistake to be undone, but a groundbreaking field of study. She had been given a unique opportunity to explore this from the inside out. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. It meant accepting that her transformation might be permanent. Could she do that? Amalia thought about the life she had built over the past months, her work, her growing friendships, the small joys she had discovered in her new form. It wasn't the life she had planned, but it was a good life. And she was in a position to potentially help countless others. The scale tipped, and Amalia made her decision. The next morning, she entered the lab with renewed purpose. She approached Dr. Larson, heart pounding. "Do you have a moment? There's something important I'd like to discuss." Over the next hour, Amalia laid out her new research proposal. She carefully avoided mentioning her personal connection to the discovery, presenting it purely as a scientific breakthrough. Dr. Larson listened intently, asking probing questions. Finally, the older woman sat back with a thoughtful expression. "This is remarkable, Amalia. Ethically complex, certainly, but the potential is undeniable. I think you may be onto something truly revolutionary here." Amalia's shoulders sagged in relief. "Thank you. I know it's an unorthodox approach, but I really believe this could change lives." "I agree. Let's set up a meeting with the ethics board and start putting together a proper research plan. This will require significant resources and oversight, but I think we can make it happen." As she left Dr. Larson's office, Amalia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time since her transformation, she felt truly excited about the future. There were still challenges ahead. She would need to carefully navigate the ethics of her research without revealing her personal involvement. And she had yet to figure out how to explain her new life to her family and old friends. But for now, she allowed herself to savor the moment. Amalia had found her path forward, one that embraced both her scientific passion and her new identity. As she walked through the lab, she caught her reflection in a beaker. The woman smiling back at her was no longer a stranger, but simply herself. Amalia, scientist and pioneer of a bold new field of study. Amalia's research consumed her, but in quiet moments, she found her thoughts drifting in new directions. Being in her new body was like exploring an uncharted continent, full of unfamiliar territory that begged to be discovered. Thanks for watching! The rest won't be viewable on YouTube, so check out Patreon if you want more.